Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
So, Michael, how have you been? I'm so glad you're on with us today. I'm very excited about having your input about Shadow of the Dragons.
It's been an interesting few months,
Yeah.
to say the least. Um, definitely, definitely a strange few months, but doing all right. Taking it one day at a time. But I'm feeling really good right now.
Well, good. You know what? Right now is all we have. So,
Right, exactly, exactly.
good to know.
Um, it's just been weird. It's just like, it's one of those things where everything happens at the same time. Um, I think with one or two things, it would have been okay, but then, there was just a lot of stuff, and I'm bouncing back, and I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I am very happy to have you here.
Oh, thank
Um, yeah. Yeah. We were getting, every time I read a new book, James would say, "Oh, that's Michael's favorite. Oh, that's Michael's new favorite."
you.
I was like,
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Well, books, I have two favorites. Um, Legit. So far, I've read up to, the one I just read was six, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my two favorites at the moment are book three and book six, which is kind of, I don't know, I guess sort of fitting because it's almost like the end of like three
Right.
sections, like the climactic, I guess, um, points. I like them all, and I've enjoyed the series immensely so far. Obviously, there's a need in long series for there to be some books that are not go go go, that are more introspective, that are a little bit more um, about the inner politics of the quest and the reasons, and getting to know the characters and stuff like that, which I found. Uh, I'm not good with names. I know Worms was the fifth one. I don't remember. Sands of Lost, is that the fourth one?
Stands a loss, yeah.
Yeah, you see, I enjoyed that book. I did find it to be a little bit more of like, after the huge climactic action and cinematic stuff that happened in book three, it moved at a little bit of a slower pace, but I still enjoyed it. But the one that I read just recently, book six, is my other favorite so far.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am almost done with, I think I'm almost done. My the app that I'm using to read it doesn't show me how much I have left, which is probably good for me. But I I believe I'm getting towards the end. And I'm just, this one like has broken my heart and just made me happy about it somehow. So it's just been amazing. But we can't talk about that one just yet, even though I'm looking forward to that talk for sure. Um, James, I haven't even said anything to you yet. Hi, how are you? The
Hi.
person who brought us these books.
I'm doing good. Yeah, doing good. I just finished my rewrites on book 10 today. So it's all ready for my editor when she gets done with book 9. So be off to book 11 and then book 12, and I'll be all done.
Oh my goodness. But you're already started on a new series, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I started heavy outlining for the first few chapters yesterday. Um, so yeah, so I have the first book outlined. I have all the characters figured out, and now I'm doing, like I said, my really detailed outlines before I will do the actual rough draft. So it was a little slow outlining because it's such a new world. I don't know it as intimately as Shadows of the Dragon. I wrote that for I've been working on that for 3 years now. So it's like I know that very well. But this one, it's a lot of new stuff, and it's a lot of names. I don't know how to spell any of my characters' names. I don't know them really yet. They're kind of still blank slates to me because I need to write them and really develop them more. So I have like ideas for what I want them to be, but we'll
Right.
see what I discover during the writing process. And like I said, it's a different world, different magic system, you know, different rules. So it's like I got to learn a whole new universe and write it.
Mhm.
So
I've been
So I'm just
messaging James going, man, do you have those first few chapters yet? I need to be the first one to read them. I'm always, whenever he comes up with like something totally new, I'm always like stoked to see how it's different than what came before.
yeah. Well, this book will have a storm that rains salt water, so that's different. The storm that weeps, and I'm just gonna throw that right there in the beginning. Yeah, the storm that weeps.
The storm that weeps. I love your imagery and how, you know, in Shadow of the Dragons, one of the things that I really enjoy is that you don't coast over anything. You know, there's no conversations that can't be had. There's no emotions that can't be felt. You have somebody talking about that topic that's bound to come up with, especially with three teenagers and, you know, newcomers coming in. I mean, they have things they're going to talk about, you know, and I'd say teenagers, the older teens, young 20s, how, you know, wherever we are in this life. But you know, Voni, Yuden, Zai, it's just so fun to see how they learn about each other, learn about themselves. Ruan, of course. Michael, I've told James from the first book that I had a crush on Ruan along with Voni. So I really enjoy reading about her. In fact, there was a fight scene in one of the two books that we're talking about today, where she was just in her PJs basically fighting. And I thought about the what was it, the Angelina Jolie in the Lara Croft movie, where she's got like the white PJs on and she's just like swinging from the ceiling and fighting and all this stuff. And I said, that's what I imagine. I see Angelina Jolie out there fighting. And he was like, I could see it.
Yeah, that's like the book five climax, I believe, is where that is, because that's because they're all like about, you know, to turn in for the night when, you know, I guess we're talking spoilers. So when Voni gets kidnapped, and so, you know, it just kicks off, and so they're kind of no one's like fully dressed really, so they're just kind of like thrown into the fight, you know.
Is Voni ever fully dressed? I mean,
you know, when I wrote the book, I didn't realize it, because like I remember like in book 7, she has to go for a swim, and you don't want to do that like clothes. It's not like they have bathing suits, right? So they don't have like the special lycra material that's good for swimming in. So she's like needs to, and I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm like, then I'm going back and I read these earlier books and I'm like, oh boy, this is not the first time that she's gotten naked.
She's not modest at all.
She is modest. It's just like necessity. It's just like it's not like she just keeps having to swim out into waters to do like mystical things with like rifts that are torn into reality, and they just keep being in water.
And then of course
they're like, I mean, they're in water for a reason, because they're like these sort of like, most of them are at the bottom of these like big craters where like they detonated, and so they just water accumulated at the bottom of them.
Didn't her clothes get like shredded in one of the battles too, or something like that?
Oh, that happens too. So don't get me wrong. So
Burned
Yuden gets all his clothes melted off at least once. So
okay.
So that is coming for the ladies or the guys. You know, if you're into that, that's coming too. So it's like it's not just Voni that ends up naked sometimes. It's it can happen to any of the characters, because it's, you know, so they might have magical protections that keep their skin whole, but like it doesn't extend to their clothes.
And what I love about it too is that Yuden is like, Voni, you're naked again. You know, and it's just so lifelike, and it's just like
it's because I realized that like when I wrote book 7, I really thought it was like the first time she had to strip naked before him, because I had forgotten. And then I was reading book 3 and I'm like, never mind, he just like falls out of the sky and finds her on the shore of the lake. I'm like, oh hey, okay, so he has seen her, okay,
right.
I need to like do a lot of revisions on like later books.
Because that's like one of the first major encounters, because whenever he kills her father on the roof, she's naked in that scene because of the ritual.
Right.
and then
See?
by the lake, and then burned the clothes off by the dragon. And yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just but that's, you know, that's what I was saying. Like I feel like if you're faced with a fire dragon and you're the only one who can defeat it, and they blow fire at you, you know, it's not like a fantasy to the point of, now let me think back on that.
It's like
They blew fire on her, and how did she survive? How did she come out of this with all her clothes? You know, and you read this and you're like, oh, that's really what would have happened, you know.
Yeah, it's like she got into, it's like a lot of people watch Game of Thrones, and like when Daenerys jumped to the bonfire at the end of season 1, she came out, all her clothes burned off because her clothes aren't magically protected like she was. In the book, she also lost all her hair, which but because apparently her hair wasn't magically protected. Neither was Bonnie's, but so that's why she loses all her hair.
Right. So Michael, you said the book 3. Okay, so book 3 is the end of the first kind of arc. When we end at Vumadenhu, that's how my robotic narrator
that's
says
fine.
it. I don't know how to say it.
That's good enough.
Yeah, I wouldn't even try to say it. Yeah, that was, you see, they're all blending to me because I've read them like one after the other. So
Same.
for me to think, I mean, there are certain things that I know are totally book 1 things, and they're, you know, that I'll know this is book 1, because book 1, Foundation of Courage, has a different feel really than any of the other books, because as the books progress, you really, you know, get introduced to other POV characters that become so beloved and so important. Like I can't imagine reading a Shadow of the Dragon book without Zai right now, you know, and I can't really imagine reading one without Dawa and Thaf. Like they're just so significant to the progression of the story. And it even now, well, I don't know, are we doing spoilers?
It's just 4 and 5 spoilers, just not 6. So 6,
yeah, let's not talk about 6.
Okay, so we won't. There is a new character. I'll just say this: it's not really a spoiler.
The new character. The 2 new characters are introduced in 5. So Rian and
we've got Rhi and we've got
Shuam.
Very briefly with Shuam so far.
In 5, okay. You see, I didn't remember that. I thought 6.
Yeah, no, they're both introduced in 5, so they're fair game.
All right, cool. Yeah, and like they're all just, their perspectives are just all so unique, and but yeah, number 3 was the big battle with Lady Wu-Fei, correct?
Yes, that's round 1.
Like, that was just so intense, and the like the aerial stuff and the battles and the just the intensity of it. Like I remember thinking, what I loved after reading that book was thinking to myself, wow, like this, if this had only been a trilogy, I would have left this trilogy feeling so rewarded, like I had read such a phenomenal trilogy. And the coolest thing is that there was like another, now I'm trying to do math, 9 books still to come after that, which was super exciting to me.
Absolutely. I remember the first time that, you know, it had gone back and forth between Yuden, Voni, Ruan, Zai, and then Dawa and Thoth. And then all of a sudden you had Rhi like going through the desert with them, and all he said was north most of the time, you know. And then eventually, you know, I'm getting curious about him and of course his background and what happened. And, you know, as like deadpan as his voice might be, when he does speak, it's like interesting, you know. And so when all of a sudden I realized I was reading his point of view chapter, I was so excited. I was like, oh yay, I get in the mind of Rhi, you know. And so I love the addition of a new point of view, you know, especially after you've had several, you know, going back and forth, and then all of a sudden you have a new one. And then of course we have Shuam at the end of book 5 that pops in, and you have a new point of view. And so I know that just for to know the scope, book 4 starts with Ruan almost being executed by the
angry Hordman for her part in the raids and stuff.
Right. And in that book, that's Sands of Loss. And so that's when they're like finishing traveling through the sands, getting to ash hounds.
Ashones, I think
Ashones?
that's a
Okay,
good
yeah.
Ashones, the lost city of Ashones.
Right. And so that's when Zai gets stuck down there in the library. And oh my gosh, I was just telling my partner today about this because it's fascinating to me. When Lumi, as a newly matured, like 5-ish-year-old, sees Gaul down in the sand dune dungeon, and she's like, bad, you bad. And you're like, and then later to realize why, oh my gosh, like heartbreak
I
again.
love,
It's just awesome.
Yeah, but that's book 6, so
yeah,
I didn't
oh,
say
yeah.
why. I just said I realized why.
If you're,
yeah.
another, if you dig Gloomy, book 6 is awesome. But yeah, no, one of the things I really liked about book 4 and what I really liked about that scene with Ruan at the beginning is it begins to really show the solidarity of the team. And you have this character that was totally representing something completely different at the beginning and seen as an antagonist, and yet she's really proven herself. And this team will go to great lengths to, keep her safe the same way they would anyone else. And I feel like book 4 is cool because you really get a lot of character moments. You get them in this horrible, torturous, just unbearable situation, and you see how these people will have to handle each other and handle the scenario being faced with something just so decrepit. That was what was cool about book 4.
I mean, one of my favorite scenes is from book 4, which is Yuden and Ruan outside the inn right before they head off into the mountains in the very like final third of the book. Just their conversation about Yuden not like, where she calls him out, she's like you want to like be a man, but you're just acting like a prissy little boy. I think it was one of the biggest moments for Yuden's character arc. And then we'll see the flip of it. I think maybe book 7. So yeah, so it's very interesting. I really like their relationship where they start off as like Yuden's like she's like his mortal enemy, right? She's like defeating her represents like everything that he dreams about, like of being this like great hero, and here's this great evil before me. And then they become, friends, and they're giving each other advice. And they're still kind of like, we're not sure how they're neither one of them kind of like, how did we really get here? That's kind of what I like about them. Like, I'm kind of like friends now. That's weird.
Well,
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Has changed. Yuden changes. Like, I mean, I know there's probably going to change a lot more. There's a lot more of story to read, but he's changed a lot from the beginning, and he's obviously, in book 5, he's become a very different person. He's had to obviously really shift his perspective on certain things, on certain ideologies that he had about how he grew up and stuff like that. And he's had to deal with being a friend to Voni as opposed to seeing her differently. And he at first he's got the pining, and he's got the whole it's not like he and it's very realistic in the sense that if that was a real situation, you wouldn't just be able to get over it in like 5 seconds. And there's enough of him going through the kind of emotional roller coaster that represents. But when he does finally get over it, he is seen as being a very good friend to her, which and vice versa. And they end up with a very realistic friendship and Zai helps with that too.
And that's one thing that I love about this kind of fiction and this kind of writer, James, is that having someone who can put a group of characters together who can teach me an idea of how I could handle a situation if I faced it in my life, and seeing how Yuden handled Voni's confession. I like girls, I always have. I didn't really realize it. I didn't know how to tell you. And, I'm just kind of coming into this truth. And for him to, obviously be upset, but then you see his perspective and you see his thought process and you see him trying to process it and understand. And, drinking the mead or whatever he had, at first. And then somebody's like, okay, that's enough. I think it was Zai.
That was
Yeah. And then, him coming around and then dealing with it, and just the conversations and, getting inside Voni's mind and how she's dealing with it, how Ruan is dealing. And, I just feel like it's an opportunity for us to really get it and to really start to wonder, if you've been in a similar situation, it makes you think about, well, I wonder what they were thinking. Maybe they were kind of going through the same thing, and maybe I need to have more compassion, or I need to approach this situation differently or in a new way, because I've read, something that broadened my perspective and really helped me understand that people are, as you said before, not monolithic. We're not made of all one thing. And even if we start off believing or feeling one way, it could be that by the end of our book 5, we've completely turned around and said, you know what, that's not quite right. And I think that I agree with you more now. But what I love about it is that none of them, I feel like, completely betray their whole identity. It's like they start to unlearn things and learn new things, but they still have their core selves. I'm trying not to go book 6-ish right now. But I feel like, for me, like, I grew up in a Christian church, and there were a lot of things that I learned that now I'm like, like, if it's women shouldn't, really be in front of their husbands on certain issues or things like that, and I'm like, okay, that kind of stuff, some of that I've kind of let go of. But when it comes to Jesus being in a street talking to a person that nobody else would talk to, I get that. I feel that. I know that that's love, and that's what it should be. And so it's like, I feel like we as humans have the tendency, if we feel like there's one thing wrong with something, we're like, okay, I'm just going to get rid of all of it. But we really, when we're able to piece something apart and really think about it and really consider, that piece of that is valuable, I'm going to hold on to that because that's important. And that has taught me something, that's helped me grow. And I'm not going to let that go. And I feel like your characters are doing the same thing. They have these values that they've grown up with. They have these stories, they have these things. And part of them says, you know what, I get that part of that is wrong, but they're able to have those conversations with their friends and say, but I'm not going to let go of all of it. And that's okay. And I think that's fascinating, especially in a fiction story in a made up world.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think one of the just to add to what you're saying, first of all, I really thought what you said was I really enjoyed that whole perspective on it. And I've thought about it too. And I think that, I mean, one of the advantages of having such a long series and having, so much breadth of novel to be able to cover so many things and be able to get into the characters that you wouldn't be able to do with a standalone or with a trilogy, is that, it's like, sure, they're all totally different. They all have different perspectives, and a lot of times different perspectives on each other and on the values that they would have had towards different races and different species and stuff like that. But by the end, but I mean, by this point, it's like watching a family grow. It's like watching it. It feels like family at this point. They're more than just a unit. They're like they've been through so much together. They become like family, and it's kind of like family first. All that other stuff is kind of put aside, and that's one of the things that I love about this series, is its focus on that,
Right.
and the commitment, their commitment to each other.
Yeah, it's powerful to me, especially like you were mentioning with Yuden and Ruan, when he lands after defeating Wu Fei and they're face to face, and Voni trusts her, and so Yuden says, "Okay." It's not like this huge thing between them. Well, I'm not going to trust you because you did this thing. His best friend in the world trusts this person, and so he gives her a chance, and I think that's really powerful. James, I think
Yeah, no,
we're both
that's a
excited,
very,
so we haven't let you
it's a
talk.
really, really powerful moment. So you guys so you like mysterious and enigmatic reading. So is that what I'm gathering though? Our stoic Drakeman that says like one words at a time.
Yes, I heart REID.
Yes, you've been texting me that as you're reading through book 6.
Yeah, I felt like I was gonna like REID when I was reading through book 5, and now that I'm in book 6, I heart REID. I do.
It's good. I wasn't sure how people would take Ree. He's very, because I wanted when you first meet him, I want you to be unsure of exactly what's up with him.
Mhm.
He doesn't have very good social skills. He's
Yeah,
like,
Like the
and
whole day of meditating, I think at first. Yeah.
yeah,
he has a
I mean, he's
really
very,
cool he has a really cool relationship with Zai. Like I think his relationship with Zai is where you start to see, he's not human, so I don't want to say the humanity in him, but the compassion, or at least the attempt. I mean, he's a hard-edged, very different perspective, yet a very strong attempt in his own way to show compassion. Um, and that's kind of where you get to see the progression of that character.
I mean, she's the only one in the party that like reached out to him.
Right.
That's
Well,
why.
Yeah, that's
she's
true.
awesome. Like I have not made any uh I'm always like, Zai is so awesome. I think she's absolutely fantastic. Um Her energy and just her sense of humor. Those chapters, because I enjoy abstract reads and a little bit of a challenge when I read, and I think that past eye, future eye stuff is like it's brain candy.
I'm
Um,
glad.
and I enjoy trying to figure it out, and put myself in those situations and imagine what it would be like to be able to see just a little bit into the future and how it would affect my decisions and stuff like that. So aside from her just being a great character and having so much to offer on a character on an emotional level, she also has some really unique like narrative stuff happening in her point of views.
Yeah, she's a fun character to write, and also the worst character to write because I always have to think, how can Zai look into the future and mess things up, or why, what is Zai going to see when she looks into the future? I always have to be thinking that, like there's always like there has to be a reason why Zai didn't look into the future, and see something, so, or if she does see it, like I have to account for that on like every single scene Zai's in. So, yeah, it's
I cannot
a
imagine.
cautionary tale to writing a character that can see into the future whenever she wants.
And she's become hardened too,
Hmm.
to an extent. When you first meet her, she's just like totally
She
irresistible.
is, yeah, we're in the middle of that arc of hers. We'll see that play out more in book 7 and 8.
Yeah. Like even without, I mean, I won't get into anything that happens in book 6, but because she is like totally like irresistibly optimistic and positive and free spirited at the beginning, and then um, she becomes a lot more uh, somewhat tormented and questioning as and a lot of it is questioning herself and her own abilities, and um, trying to she's got this amazing power, but it unfortunately has some limitations and some roadblocks that make it not always work, and you get this whole weak link scenario, or sometimes she considers herself the weak link in the party. And I think that's somewhere where that getting back into Ree, I think that's where you get into Ree's compassion. And at first he's kind of like, stop being a baby, stop being so depressing, just, get over it. Like, I think he says something really almost threatening. I don't remember about her when she's lamenting, and then he ends up helping her afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's something like because it's something along the lines of, I'm going to teach you not to be useless because it's better than, letting my anger just destroy you because you didn't do anything and that pissed me off. That's Ree. He'd rather, like, instead of like lashing out in anger, he'd rather make her productive. Like, he doesn't see lashing out in anger as a useful thing. So it's better to teach her to be useful than to waste his time on the useless emotion of anger, I think would be a good way to sum up that, where he currently is in his character arc.
Yeah, I think he says something like, I wanted to break her in half when she was just standing there watching you fight.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe I could make a different decision. So he teaches her, which I think is great.
That was, I think it was that, something where she was just annoying him so much, and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna help fix this person so that she can stop being this way and we can, like, move on with our lives. But that's interesting because of Zai's character when you first meet her, being, almost like a Disney princess, and how
that is great. She's like Ella in Enchanted, right? Like, there's nothing can go wrong for her. Like, everything just, like, magically.
She just traipses across the rooftops with this really amazingly positive attitude, and the way she comes into it, like the way she is introduced as seeing, knowing that Yudon's going to be your husband, and he has no idea what, and she says that it's just like something, there's something very cinematic about the way that whole thing unfolds. Like, I find that I could visualize, big screen adaptation of a lot of this stuff. James, I know you're not a big fan of adaptations of movie adaptations of books. But
I'm a big fan if they respect the source material.
Well, you like Dune.
They've respected the source material.
Right. But I find
I have a leather-bound, like, copy of Dune back here. I really love that book.
Yeah, no, it was really good. But I think that the way my mind works, a lot of times is it's like, it excites me to be like, oh, who would you cast for this role, for the role of this character? And
I get asked that question, all the time, but I always am like, I don't know. I guess they're not like movie stars to me. They're like their own characters. So I have trouble, like, picturing who would be them. I guess, I don't know. Maybe my brain just doesn't work that way.
Oh, now
I get asked that a lot
about it now.
Because, like, my editor will sometimes send me an email like, she's like, is this she sent me one for my main character and Jewels of Illumination. She's like, is this what he looks like? And I'm like, I guess. I mean, it's the right, like, skin tone and hair color and build, and I guess, but I don't know. That's like this other person, and then this is, my character. They're like two different people to me. So I guess I have a hard time, going, like, trying to picture, like, you playing that.
I think that's fair, though. I mean, it's like, I feel like it's kind of like somebody saying, is this what your sister looks like? And you're like, I mean, it's like, I know what my sister looks like. Even if you don't necessarily know exactly what your character looks like, enough to say that's not them, and I can imagine it would be really hard to see your story put into a limited, movie screen because there's just so much that you wouldn't be able to portray. You might not be able to get the creepiness of the voice for Dawa and Thoth, or the right way that Ree talks with his was trying to say wispy and raspy at the same time. His waspy voice. But I would love to see this. Like Michael said, on the big screen. That would be amazing.
Yeah. It would be. I mean, I get like it would be cool to see it.
I just feel like we're the precursors. Like in 50 years, this is going to be old news, and this is already going to be like several movies and TV series, out there already, and we're just going to be like, yeah, I knew that was coming. Duh. But I found the line that Zai said at one point, or no, that you said about Zai, and I wanted to read it really quick. Present Zai peered at what future Zai was up to, while future Zai remembered what past Zai had done.
Yeah, that's a good summation of her existence.
Yeah, that's Zai. There she is.
Yeah, I love when you get into kind of like stranger narratives and especially lore, like when you get into the lore of like a new character, which is again one of the reasons I really enjoyed book 6, is that there's a lot of lore, expansion of the universe, like expansion of the world building and expansion of the background and the histories of certain races and things like that. Completely non-spoiler at all, but people that like that kind of thing and really dig world building and just an overall expansion of everything that just makes you go, wow, we're going in a different direction here. There's a lot of that there.
And it's not like whiplash different direction. It's like, that makes sense. I feel like one thing I told James in one of our earlier interviews was that I love how this world building is not like other stories that I've tried to listen to on audiobook, and I had to stop because it was too much information. It was just like overload. And with this story, I feel like from the very beginning, from Hatuna's poison teats at the very beginning,
Yeah, because it's like because that's how characters curse, and like they use the gods like Hood's breath or
yeah.
No, I actually got that from the that Showtime show Spartacus. Like they were saying Zeus's genitalia, but they were using a much more vulgar word for it as a swear. And I think that's actual how Romans swear. They said, because we have their profane graffiti they wrote everywhere. Like,
well, that's like in the book that I'm narrating right now. It's called, and I'll just advertise for a second. the Lost Sigil is the name of it, and Insurrection is the first book. But one of the things that their lore is, their creator, they consider it like basically the blacksmith. The smith is what they say, and so they'll say, in the smith's name or something like that, and their curse is flames. They're just always like flames, and it's cool. Like when you are able to wrap your everyday language and your traditions and things around that core lore of the story, and I think it's really interesting. The reason I brought up Hatuna's poison teats earlier is because I felt like the curse.
I don't tell you like who Hatuna is. I just have them curse in her name. Yeah.
And I feel like it's like I felt like a little kid who was learning language for the first time. I hear my dad say this word a lot, and eventually I learned what it is, whether I need to or not, but it felt like little snippets of the world were repeated, not in an annoying way, but in a way that it would just naturally come out. And eventually somebody starts explaining to somebody else in the story who this person is, or who this god is, or who the dragon is, and you're like, oh wait, I've heard that word like 20 times just in passing, and now I know what it is. And it's like it sticks in your mind because you've heard it and you've got it into your vocabulary, like you would when you're just learning a language for the first time, and now you get it. And now there's it's like, I know there's like different levels of learning, and one is like memorizing, and then it's application, and it's like, I've memorized that word. I don't know what it means, but once I learn what it means, it's already in my head. So now I can use it and I understand it. And so it builds, its layers. And the thing I love about this is that you mention, the Drake kind and the Drake men. And then it's not till like I think we meet Ree in book 4, right? Sands of
Our
Lost.
first, well, we meet C in book 2. That's our first Drake.
I mean, Ree.
Yeah, we'll meet him as a proper character in book 5. You see him in book 4. Like he's
Okay.
watching them as they cross the desert. So,
Right.
That's the start of the enigmatic Ree storyline, is just what's up with the dude on the dunes just sort of watching us cross the desert. So that
Right.
was the start of the mystery. And then we picked up the mystery in book 5 when he's just like sitting there ready to talk to them, but doesn't really want to. He's just like, listen, we're going to do this. Anyways, that goes like when you understand Ree's like backstory, everything he does in book 5 will make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really interested to hear about the backstory. I guessed parts of it, and which was really fun. But
Yeah.
but
All I
yeah,
will say is that he drops it in the most casual, offhanded manner. If my editor was like, wait, really? This is how Ree tells his backstory? I'm like, yeah, he's Ree. What, did you think he'd make it all dramatic? He would just like offhandedly tell someone his horrible backstory.
I believe that. That sounds like Ree. But yeah, knowing that Drake kind existed for 4 books before we met one, or really got into the character of one.
Yeah, like you mean
Really
see,
cool.
and there's Za, who is the Drake Knight commander in book 3.
Yeah, and it's
So
like
we
you
meet a couple.
yeah, you meet them, but then you get their perspective. You get Ree's
Yeah,
perspective, and you get his
and
inside
Za,
of
I
his
mean,
mind.
and Ree's a very different character from Za. Like they're very different. Like the other Drakemen are not as closed off emotionally as Ree is. Like Ree is actually an outlier from the other Drakemen that we have in the books. Um, but he's also the other Drakens we have in the books are much more. I don't know. They hang around humans a lot, so maybe that's partly why they're more used to dealing with humans who have, as the Drakemen will say, more volatile emotions. They feel things more strongly than the Drakemen do. So maybe they're just more used to being a bit more various. Yeah,
And I love
there's
how we know how each race, in general, of course, handles emotion. We know in general what their background might be, what their like mating rituals. Everybody is different, and I just love that. I mean, you have the shrubmen, and you have the drakemen, and you have the worms, and you have the people, and it's in the conversation. It's not something where I've got to read a dictionary to understand these cultures and these biologies and everything. It's just in the story, and it just makes sense. And like I said, it's just like learning a language easily through natural environment, and it makes it so easy to understand and follow, and also gives you something to look forward to like all the time. I know you mentioned something about how you have this giant world, and we may not ever even set foot on some of the countries or even hear their names, but they're there. But it gives us something
guarantee
to
you
look forward to. Yeah,
that
it
we
gives us
don't
something
hear
to look
every
forward
country's
to.
name. Yeah, we barely step foot on. It mostly takes place on one continent. There's a little bit on another continent, and there's a third continent that we meet someone from. That's about it.
Getting back to the shrubmen, because you mentioned them when you were talking about the races. I think the first time I loved the first book, and I thought, like, I knew I was enjoying it, and I was enjoying the process of continuing to read it. The first time I felt like real brilliance in the series, like where I was just like, wow, this is amazing, was in the first Dawa and I don't know if maybe it was Dawa's first POV chapter where they
I believe it's Devil's chapter.
where
I think it's
where they talk about like their whole grafting experience, and the whole, like, there's just so much there, like the whole science of how they exist as a unit. And it just, from everything that we had read before that point, it just took such a different perspective by fleshing out a race that totally doesn't exist but somehow seems so real, and that you can almost imagine that, this is possible. And it's, interesting play on the idea that the male and the female have such different roles in their grafting, like, and yet they want to be together. And they're very, like, they're heartwarming, like they're a heartwarming couple, even as bizarre and weird as they are. So yeah, it works really well.
I agree with you, Michael. It's like you have this. I remember trying to tell someone about the shrub men, the shrub people, and I was like, I mean, it makes sense, And to me, the way it's written, you get to the point where, like, Dow and Thaf just, I mean, duh, of course there's shrub people. Why wouldn't there be? Like, that's how I feel now. It's like, yes, there's Drake kind, what, the triangular muzzle. Yeah, I mean, that's what Ree looks like. What's the problem? And I feel like it's just so, it draws you in, and it really doesn't seem weird at all.
Well,
I guess that's because you get their perspective.
The worms are very weird.
The worms are pretty weird.
Yeah, the worms are weird, but I'm just meeting Shuam, and so I think eventually it might not be as weird, but yeah, it's getting their perspectives is everything. And I feel like, again, it ties me back to life in general. It's like, what if that person at work that drives you nuts, what if you could read their POV chapter? What if you knew what was behind their bad morning? What if, and it just, I want that in my life. I want to have the same perspective that I have for these characters, because I've met Ruan and I know that I thought she was just a bad guy. And now I know, wait a minute, this is what happened when she was a kid that completely traumatized her. And now she has trust issues. And now the guy who, and like all these things happened to her. And she's conflicted. She's completely conflicted. Even if she looks hard, she looks like she's completely confident in what she's doing. You read her point of view chapter and you realize all the conflict that's going on there. And I feel like it just reminds me of how, they talk about icebergs. That's the tip of the iceberg. Like, literally, we only show the world a tiny bit of who we truly are in our daily lives. And it takes a lot of digging to really understand each other and to really get to that place of, you know what, you and I have a totally different perspective about this. But if we take a minute and talk about it, we might understand why. Perspective is everything.
Yeah, no, I think one of the best analogies I've ever heard for it was people are like a coin. There's two faces, right? There is the face that we show the world, but we don't know how the world sees it. Then there's the face that only we see, and the world does not get to see that face. So,
wow.
Like, we don't know how other people see us, and they don't know how we see ourselves. And that's the perpetual dilemma of humans. Is, like you said, you don't really know what's beneath the surface, and you don't really know what other people are, seeing about you at the same time. So that's kind of social interactions.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to say I'm very excited about Lumi. I'm always excited about Lumi, but meeting.
Yeah, because you got 5-year-old Lumi right now. Yeah, 5-year-old Lumi.
5-year-old Lumi, and I just love it. I actually was explaining to my partner today. I was like, so let me tell you about Lumi. Like, here's what Lumi is, and here's how this works. And I just the idea of having a character who lived thousands of years ago, but now is a little kid, and the people around her used to worship her and pray to her, but now she's with them as a toddler, and it's like now they're trying to figure out how do I, deal with this little tiny goddess that I have. And I love, so it took me a while to warm up to Yuden, just because there were a couple of girls in the story that I really liked, and I was just like, but then once I started paying attention to his perspective, and I've really warmed up to him now, and seeing him treat Lumi as his daughter, whether he'll admit it or not, the other characters see it all the time, and they just see how good he is with her. And I just love that. And I love to see that in him. I didn't expect that. He's got this, he wants to be a hero when he starts off, like you said, Michael, he's changing so much, but again, he's keeping his core self. But his idea of being a hero is still solid, but it's evolving. And
at least right now where we're at with him, he's definitely really become a hero to root for. He always was, but he had that kind of brashness and that kind of very kind of, and that's the evolution of his character, is the kind of closed-minded idea of what it means to be heroic. But he's had the opportunity to kind of be heroic in more subtle ways and different ways, and in ways that he probably would never have understood at the beginning of the story, or wanted to be. And it's just happened very gradually. Now, I don't know, because I've only read up to book 6, what is going to happen. There's still half a series left to go. So I don't know at all how it's going to go from this point on. But at least at this point, he's definitely become a true heroic kind of figure, and a good dude, just a good dude to root for.
Yeah, that's what you want out of your main protagonist in a heroic story, that people root for. So I'm glad it's working, because I really I want him to be that heroic character. I want him to be a really sort of noble hero, one who who wants to do the right thing and not and and watch his motivations change, and expand. But part of it, the father-daughter relationship with Lumi is, I think, a very important part. It's a different way to show him being heroic, with how he has to sort of how their relationship evolves, and sort of what they're going to be going through, their journey. Because this entire story started when he found Lumi, right? That's our inciting incident, to this entire series. You didn't.
And I remember
finding
thinking,
Lumi.
Yeah, I remember thinking the first half of the first book, oh, that's so cute. There's a little, blue fox, and my Patronus is a fox, so I was just like, yay, it's a fox. And then I started paying attention to how she interacted, and then of course when we found the second piece of Lumi, I was like, oh, wait a minute, But it's amazing to see how I don't mind having a character that doesn't have anything to do other than just be happy and flounce around.
That's Nettles. That's Nettles. Nettles has nothing to do than to be happy and play around. And
yeah. So we
Nettles. I make one promise: Nettles doesn't die. That's the only promise I'll make.
Yeah,
Nettles doesn't die.
But I was going to bring this up just and go off topic, but since you mentioned character death, I'm glad, and up until book 5, I'm not saying, because I'm not allowed to mention book 6. I'm not saying that anyone dies in book 6, but I'm not saying anything about it in general. The series manages to keep its intensity and the weight that you bear for these characters remains intense, despite the fact that in 5 books we have not lost a main character yet. or we've not lost a main protagonist yet. Like there's been side characters and stuff like that. And that's a testament to how strong the characters are. Like I don't want any of them to die, not even for like, that sort of like, oh my God, like we lost this character. Wow, what a shift in momentum and stuff like that, because I'm just enjoying them. And I still feel their situations, the intensity of their situations, even though, my feeling right now is that, somehow they're going to figure this out. Somehow they're going to get out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not like I feel like they don't come out unscathed from things.
No.
It's not like oh, we defeated this dragon and we're cool now. We're just, it's like, no, we've been traumatized. We're hurting. We have to overcome this. We have to lean on each other. I just love the reality in this fantasy. And like you were talking about earlier about Yuden, I think I mentioned it in an earlier video too, how he got past, I guess, the idea that he wouldn't be with Oni, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't overnight and it wasn't smooth. He needed support. And I think it could have gone on longer. Like he could have struggled for a longer period of time, but James managed to have it where he was surrounded by therapy. I feel like he had Zai, who was just a constant positive energy, and he had Dao and Thoth, he had Voni, who was still there and wanting to, be a friend to him. And he had reasons to fight. I felt like he, at that time, they were going through the Horde lands and he was proving his worth to the Hordemen, and the tribes. And he got that almost sense of self and sense of, okay, I'm not nobody because
he was no longer all talk like he was in the first book.
And so he had reason to keep going. He didn't feel like he was nothing because Voni didn't want him, as her romantic hero. I love that she still calls him her hero.
I love that too.
Yeah,
I love that. I enjoy the platonic love that they have for each other as the series progresses, and how gradually they are able to start reminiscing again about the old times. It's like these things that would have been hard moments for Yudan to deal with when it was fresh, when he was realizing that all throughout the time when they would reminisce about things together, he imagined that he was going to be spending the rest of his life with her. And as it shifts and as it seems like he's falling in love with Zai and like his whole everything is changing, they're now able to talk about things as friends without him going in that place, going in that despair of not being able to be with her.
Yeah, it was a goal. I needed to put him through the journey, but I didn't want to wallow in the journey for terribly long. I felt like, I had to find that right balance where it's believable but not self-indulgent. Yeah. And then in book 4 he has the whole like he needs to accept that like, Voni can also risk her life, to protect him is something that that was his next sort of character thing he had to deal with. It's not that just that, he's not going to be with her, but he also has to accept that she can protect him. That she has as much a right to be a hero as he does. So that was his next little hurdle.
And I think it's cool because I don't expect the hurdles, but when they come, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. I guess that is something he would have to be able to handle at some point, and to realize, oh, she needs to be able to risk her life for me. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was just looking down at one of the texts that I sent you, James, while I was reading when Ree was leading them through the desert. And I said, I would trust the lizard dude if I were y'all. I mean, what else you got? But what's north? Like, I was like, I don't know where he's taking them, but I feel like we need to trust this guy. So yeah.
Yeah, and they took him to like one of the worst places in the world, and the party nearly killed each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came very close to throwing down with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, they really did.
Is it-
I know at one point I was like, can we stop? I was like, can y'all talk and walk at the same time? We got a desert to escape. We're having a
Yeah.
serious conversation. I'm like, yes, I know, but like, you're gonna die, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what Reed's there for. He knows how to survive. He's like our friend, and he's gonna keep them alive. I mean, the sands is like my little dune, mini dune. So they even threw us like some little sad words in there. Yeah, some little things that you can eat that like drink water. Yeah, so like it was a little bit of homage to. It was my little dune moment. I'm not ashamed to say,
Love that.
but yeah, no, I mean, I think that was because we had to deal with Dao, Thoth, and Rowan being really having diametrically opposed views of what their goals should be, right? So we had to deal with that because Dao and Thoth were like, "Dragons bad. We can't bring dragons back." And then Ruan is like, "No, we can bring dragons back. We just don't have to do it evil, like the apostasy seems to be doing." And
Yeah,
Bunny's like, "Yeah, I like that idea. Let's do it the non-evil way." And so suddenly we have a very big,
there was like
crisis.
there was a brief moment, and I hoped it wasn't, but where I kind of felt like Dawa and Thoth were turning, and we're going to end up becoming kind of the antagonists of to an extent, just by nature of their core values, and the fact that at this point I knew that Ruan was really important and really set, and like, you know what I mean? It's like I knew if you were gonna have Dawa and Thoth, or you were gonna have Ruan being the protagonist at this point after that redemption, it seemed like, but then they worked it out, and I was glad that they did, because they're too lovable to be bad guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. It's just but no, I don't know. I think it was because it's like the shift, like, so I think the early goal was like we got to stop the apostasy, stop the dragons coming back. That was kind of the initial party goal, and now it's changed, and we need to really. I felt like as the book, we really needed to address that and say like, hey, our party goals are shifting, and let's get this out of the way, and we need to bring Dao and Thoth on board because they're the most resistant, because they're the most damaged. Like you have like Voni's very damaged by the apostasy, but so are Dao and Thoth. They're very damaged, and they're very probably good reasons to be opposed to anything the apostasy wants. And they didn't have a dragon in their head, like Voni did. Who she becomes like, like a little surrogate mother-daughter relationship there. So yeah,
She has a way to understand the dragons, because like you said, she has a dragon in her, so she is forced to hear that perspective, whereas Dao and Thoth have to get it from external sources and decide whether or not they're going to change their minds. And again, it's not a dichotomy anymore. Whenever Ruan was accepted by Yuden, and what was that moment? The moment that she threw Dawa the bright lance and said, "Go take care of Lady Wu Fei." That's when I was like, oh my gosh, we have a third perspective now, because it's not just the gods or the dragons. Now we're like, well, I mean, I want to, redeem the dragon, get the dragons back, but we don't have to do it like they want to do it. We don't have to be, I hate you in order to love you. We can just be like, okay, I get everybody's struggles right now, and we can do this a different way, and we can just, go a third direction, and that's okay. And it's not black and white anymore, and that's just beautiful. You bring all the color into it.
we should be no, it's so I think book 5. I think that's maybe the biggest moment in book 5, and it's very early on in it. So maybe that's poor pacing on my part. So,
I haven't noticed any poor pacing.
but yeah, no, it's I don't know. I always feel like you can't just have characters change minds. You gotta like give them a reason to change their mind, and
Mhm.
maybe they won't. And this also isn't the series that I want to have my main characters killing each other. I have that series. It exists.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah,
Now I need to read
yeah,
some. um, there was something oh, I think this is in book 5. Wait, yes. The egg that we got from Maidenhu that we didn't know
yeah.
about still. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The egg.
The one that
Um,
Vuni
yeah,
has
the one that's
baby.
the one
Yeah.
that Vani's pregnant with. Yeah,
You see, that was there are a lot of shocking moments and like WTF moments like in the series. The egg obviously being a really big one that changes things really intensely going forward. And it was really cool. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was getting at was
yeah,
is that you've managed to shock us without necessarily using the tried and true Game of Thrones style killing off your main character in the first book kind of thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which is
You don't
cool.
have to use melodrama. We get excited over victories that may seem small in a smaller story, but in this very involved, very detailed, very just, I don't know, internally moving story, this things that may seem small in other situations are just, they're huge, and I think that Michael, you got it exactly right. Like, we don't need these huge dramatic moments, even though we get some of those. The ones where, I mean, when Ruan and Voni played tic-tac-toe on the beach, I was like, like, oh my goodness. Just you just did a good job.
thank you.
Just did a good job.
So any thoughts on the Worm City that we meet in book 5? You have to go into a whole new world. I'm just curious, like, what did you think about that?
With Shuam.
Yeah, and off to Faye, and how
Yeah,
like their little underground city worked, and
yeah, that was really, I like that. I can imagine the view, like you talk about the 7 levels and the bridges that like go across, and the where the like main, the Archon, is it Archon?
yeah, the
Archon,
Archinopolis,
Archinopolis, yeah,
the
Archinopolis is like
Archinopolis,
at
yeah.
the bottom, I think, and then it like expands up, and I don't know, I could just see it in my head of like what it looked like, and just having them talk about how they took turns, like the couples would take turns having children because they were hermaphrodites, and so they had both, and they were like, oh, I'm gonna have the child this time, and I'm gonna, and just hearing the perspective from the inside was just fascinating. And then to know that they have lived underground as earthworms would, as worms would, but having Shuam say something about, his parents took him up to the surface as a wormling, but only briefly, and just I don't know. I really enjoyed delving into their perspectives, because first of all, that obviously was the oddest character that I could think of. Like when you were first on the boat with Ruan in the beginning, and you just like kind of briefly get a taste of each of the races. Lizard people, I was like, okay, I can see big lizard, I can see that. Plant people, okay, like I said, I saw Groot in my head. Obviously they have a lot more language than I am Groot. but the worms, that just, I was stuck at first, and I was like, okay, I think I get it, but are they like really fat worms? Are they still skinny? Are they, wait, they have arms, wait a minute, and so like,
Yeah.
and then, but then hearing Shuam talk, and we get more of Shuam in book 6. I mean, it's not a spoiler, it's just kind of, him talking about feeling his skin stretching, or feeling, one of his 3 brains doing something, or things like that is really interesting. And it really, I've definitely been trying to put myself in that perspective and imagine. I love how he says, well, I'll talk about that in the next book, because it's like not a event spoiler, but it's still a spoiler. But I just love the way he views the other characters and then considers how it might feel to be them, so yeah, that's you asked me what I thought, and that's
Yeah,
that was my first
he's a
thought.
great character. I was just like curious. I was wondering, like, all right, and then you just suddenly cut to this brand new character that's nowhere near the party. I was like, oh, wonder what people think about that. I guess I did that with Zai, didn't I? And Downs, I guess that's why I introduced all the new characters, except for Ree. You meet Ree before you get his POV, but all the other ones are like, cut to, wait, who are these weird people in places
Yeah.
I've never heard of? And
No, I mean,
yeah.
I to an extent you did that, and I mean, I've read Storm Below, and you did that. You do that when you introduce new characters, and new point of views a lot, and it's always really cool to just see them come in. Guys, I'm gonna have to jump off because there's gonna be another meeting happening with my wife. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
thanks for
No,
joining. It was great having you.
this has been awesome, and I thank you guys so much for inviting me on. I had a great time. I would love to do this anytime, and I'll make sure that now that I know we talk for a really long time, I'll make sure that there's nothing going on afterwards, so that I can keep it going. Definitely would have loved to be a part of the book 6 chat. Being that I just have so much to say about it.
Awesome.
But no, but this was great. Sarah, thank you. James, always awesome.
Yep,
And
great talking with you.
have a great night, guys.
Yeah, you have a great one too.
Take care.
Bye.